Welcome to the Disassembled podcast, a monthly conversation between me, Travis Razor, and John Schwartz, the Data Sherlock, disassembling the media, history, and our current culture. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. You may want to go back and listen to part 1. Let's join our heroes now.
I would say that both the fact that the Afghanistan war is now the longest ongoing U.S. war in history, and the fact that Iraq is being at least partially invaded by Turkey, we are set up for a lot of beautiful Middle Eastern conflicts for the next decade, really, because Turkey is pretty radical now. Well, it's a dictatorship, right? Can we just say it's a dictatorship? And now they're invading. Do we even have nukes in Turkey, though? At this point, who knows? Do we even have them there in the first place? Were they a bluff? Because if my history is accurate, the JFK missiles in Turkey, were those not also a bluff in the 1960s, 1960, 1961?
Yeah, that was what caused the Cuban Missile Crisis, was we wanted to put in these missiles in Turkey, and then the Russians said, don't do that, and this was all secret at the time, and we said, no, screw you, we're going to do it anyway. And so then they put missiles in Cuba, and then we turned around and said, oh, these guys are so aggressive, they're doing this, and it's so unfair. And then they made a backdoor deal that came out later that said, okay, well, we'll remove them from Cuba if you remove them from Turkey, and then we just quietly remove them.
So maybe in I don't know what comes next, but what if the Russians were to put missiles in Turkey now that we're likely have pulled our missiles out, we're pulling our base out? Can the Russians take Turkey as a sphere of influence, something that's long been a base of operation for Americans? Could that also go?
Turkey isn't. What was the original Crimean War about, right? What is the history of about 1650 to today in the region? It is the story of Russia taking it over continually and other powers intervening, creating small buffer countries, and keeping the Russians back. I mean, that's the entire thing. It's much more in the context of hundreds of years' history important that the Russians took Crimea again than it is in 10-year history.
But at some point in the near future, maybe 50 years, Turkey will have more people than Russia. Iran will have more people than Russia. That will happen. Maybe the Russians will expand, but on a per soldier basis, Turkey, Iran, and Egypt will all be able to outman Russia.
Yeah, well, so can the Chinese, and none of those things matter anymore. True.
Numbers.
First off,
numbers are neutralized through technology, bombs, tanks, drones.
So let's just go back. When this was created, this system of fighting was created in the Napoleonic era, where you had a successful revolution in France that destroyed the economy. And so the state took over a lot of the functions of the economy. And one of the ways that you could get people into the economy was by having them become barbarian raiders, aka army soldiers. And they sent them all over Europe to gather up plunder and bring it back to France. And then they all got a little part of it, and so that's how they got paid, was by plunder and raiding. And so what is that system as we see today, this glorious, patriotic, democratic army where the citizens rose up and all fought, and destroyed these old monarchies? It actually was just a system to get them out of the cities so that they could rebuild their country, which had been destroyed by the revolution. Destroyed. And also, hopefully, they could bring back some plunder that would help. And so today we have this, oh man, these people are going to have so many people, yada, 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 they'll be able to do this. I'm like, no, the moment they do, their governments will fall because their governments are based on strong control over this group of people. So by giving them guns, you've destroyed your own government. So no, right. I don't think they're actually a threat. I think by gaining these huge populations, they're now a threat to themselves.
Oh, and perhaps that's true. Iran, one of the fastest growing countries in the world, led to the Iranian Revolution. The revolution quickly realized that having 7 children per mother was not going to be sustainable. And they quickly changed that direction. Large numbers of people often lead to large problems. This is true.
Large number of people are a threat to a centralized regime.
That's a better statement. And I will say that in the case of Egypt, the military government is even more aggressive and more anti-freedom than the one they revolted against.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course.
And well, yeah, I know. It's a good lesson where you really need to put something strong to counter a dictatorship, right? If you had a dictatorship and you have a revolution and then you break the revolution apart and it gets fragmented, it's very hard to get something still better after that moment. Because the power was still concentrated in the military. The military supported the takedown of Mubarak.
Right.
They did. They said, maybe it is time to get rid of this asshole. But they didn't want Morsi. They didn't want a Muslim Brotherhood, someone a little more fanatical, who would actually disrupt their past 40, 50 years of power building.
Right. So if we imagine now, okay, well, we sent the Egyptian army into conflict with Russia, and let's just say it's basically annihilated. And it's maybe not even in Egypt. What I think of is when they invaded Oman, right, in the 50s or 60s, right, and then the Saudis.
60s.
Yeah, and then the Saudis intervened with us, and then eventually, and the British.
And the Brits.
Yeah, and they were eventually able to push the much stronger, much better equipped Egyptian army out of the region using, guerrilla tactics and advanced weaponry. And so, you've got this destroyed army, and then back at home, you've got still a large number of people who avoided military service and are just sitting around becoming radicalized. They immediately topple the government, and now the army's gone. So you end up with probably a nation that just breaks apart. Because if the army doesn't step in and solve the problems by creating order, then the state will fall apart. Like, what would a Muslim Brotherhood be without the support of the army? And then what would have replaced them if there was no army to step in and solve that crisis?
Well, I think the Muslim Brotherhood is it's like a government that functions outside of a government. They set up schools, they set up hospitals, they set up businesses, they have politicians. They're a completely stratified parallel society. I don't think, yes, they even have like police on the payroll, just like Hamas and Hezbollah.
I'd see that, though, as much more likely. Is that, yeah, you would see total, not just the beginning of it, or not just some degree, but you would see total dissolution of the system, where if there was no government, by which I mean military, to step in and say, look, there is one thing, and we will enforce that there is one thing, then it would have broken up into, there is this Muslim Brotherhood thing, this system, and there's going to be other systems, because they're not the majority. And without a strong central figure at that point to go in and step in and say, nope, we're staying here, that wouldn't happen. And so that's why you cannot march an army out of Egypt anymore, because the Egyptians themselves will destroy Egypt. You cannot march an army out of all of these places. Iran, without their army in Iran, stops being Iran. There really are not that many people, I think, that are super into this idea of we should remain where we're at. They would not have these super ambitious and world politically, sensitive ideas and ambitions if their idea was we're going to remain Iran forever.
No, they want to become something else, right?
Right. So if we don't have our army here, then Iraq's going to invade or whatever it is.
Or you just make your police act like an army. You can always do that one.
That helps, but even then, it's different.
It's only 1 degree.
Yeah.
I understand it's not the full force. It's not the equivalent amount of skill or experience.
And, you have to then be able to... This happened, too, in the French Revolution, where they sent the armies... we see that there were tons of little revolutions that happened even after these mostly, it was over. And what they did is they sent in the revolutionary armies from other regions that had rivalries with the regions that were being, in revolution. And they told them, go in there and destroy that place. This place that's been your antagonist for 1,000 years, just destroy all their stuff, kill everyone there, go crazy. And they kind of worked that out, right? Anybody that was left over after this period of revolt was pretty much okay because they were not the ones that revolted. And anybody that did got their stuff burned. So they had a lot of little regional disputes to exploit. If you have other places that don't, or if you have places that don't have a strong enough, system to send a lot of soldiers, I don't know if that'll work.
Interesting. And that's, as compared to a country like the U.S. where we have militarized police, we have private security, we have National Guard, and we have a bunch of soldiers in bases all over the U.S. Roughly 1 million soldiers. It's rough. I don't have a good number on how many are based here, but we'll call it 1 million, 500,000. Still not enough to control everyone with guns, right?
Oh, we don't need to. I mean, that's just directly enforced. We are like the representatives that we send around to all the other gangs, and then we help those gangs do what we want. It's a British style. You don't actually have to have a big garrison because you've got the local guys, and if they can't handle it, then just sending in, the Marines, just sending in the Redcoats is a big deal. Where the Redcoats don't mess around. Your local guys, they might show some leniency, but if Assad calls in the Russians, they're killing everybody. And so just by being there, their only purpose is to kill everyone if things go wrong. Very, very different from, well, the army could step in and try to find the leaders and kill them.
Yeah.
They could try to kill just the people who are in that subgroup. No, Aleppo's gonna go away. It doesn't matter if you're good or bad. If you're there, goodbye. That's the Russian approach, right? That's what our approach is.
Yep. I mean, we're total war kind of country. If there's an enemy, we bomb the city. We don't bomb his house. We bomb the city.
Right,
and
because
then,
that's our role. We're the hammer that comes down when things go wrong. So you don't actually need that many people there. You need just enough to maintain a constant presence, to build some big walls around compounds and cities, and let them know that there are some killers in there ready to come out at any time. And we control the sky.
Yeah. Still the dominant form of power, right? Not as dominant, but still dominant.
Well, that's how we manipulated regime change in Libya and every other place that we've ever done it.
How we did Iraq, Syria. Doesn't really work in Afghanistan, though.
Well, the thing is that it works to exploit this idea that you do actually have a state, but it maybe isn't that strong. And so it worked in Iraq because the state itself was built on all of these little alliances and little power brokering agreements. And so by going in there and removing the linchpin, the entire thing falls apart. So nominal mission accomplished. Whereas with Afghanistan, the amount of integration was actually very, very low. And then the reasons that people were linked together were not based on mutual need or antagonism. They were based on a different type of system, right? They were based on either their religious and social beliefs or these kind of longer term, multi-100-year kind of dynastic style power sharing agreements.
Well, Afghanistan's also been united through invasion. It's
right.
A place where their identity has been formed by great powers trying and failing to occupy them. So they are versed in occupation as a failure. So they'll embrace it because they can reap some value, but then they'll kill you, right? I mean, that's a lot of the times when soldiers die in Iraq or Afghanistan is when Afghanis blow themselves up in your base. There's lots of double agent kind of deals. Lots of you hire a new corp of Afghan policemen, and one of them is a terrorist, and they blow up and kill every new soldier, and then no one will ever join the soldiers again. That's the problem with we'll go back to this Vietnamization of military, where we're like, we got our advisors, we'll train a corps, the corps will fight security.
Right.
It works so much less smoothly than that.
Well, just like Vietnam, right? I mean, we could beat the Vietnamese army, but we could not beat the guerrillas.
No, because they look the same. They look the same. They all live in caves. They're all warlords, blah, blah, blah. Which warlords are the good guys? Oh, not the ones raping boys, but the ones here selling heroin? It's like, it's too much for us to deal with in some senses. We can't suspend all our moral values. Even when we're invading and killing people, there's some things we find even more deplorable. But hey, it's the heroin supply is way up, right?
Yeah, I think so. But that's kind of the thing, though, on the other hand, right? Where what is Afghanistan? You can say pretty definitively what is Vietnam, but it's hard to say definitively what is Afghanistan, and that is the problem. It doesn't actually exist. So you can't go in there with the SILE like you could in Syria.
And that's why we're still fighting there, because it's not what we consider a mission accomplished. It's an unaccomplishable mission in many ways. And the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan, it's not really one country. You know, Waziristan. They're almost their own entities.
I don't know.
Of national.
I think it is mission accomplished, though. I think we actually succeeded all the objectives, because let me look at what it was like in 2000. You had a crumbling Afghanistan and was barely able to hold on to their control. You had a rising in power Pakistan, a rising in power Central Asia, a rising in power Iran, and you had a weakening in power Iraq, and a rising in power Turkey, and a rising in power Syria and Jordan. And now, 15 years later, every single one of those has flipped. Now, the Iranians, they're rising in power, but not against us. They're with us now. The Turks are lowering in power, and they've flipped. Iraq is now not weak anymore. We've put a ton of guns in there, and so nobody can just roll in, right? If the Iranians wanted to invade Saudi through Iraq, it would be a lot more difficult now. Whereas in 2000, it might have been like the Nazis rolling through Belgium. Now it's going to be pretty hard. Afghanistan is the same way. If you want to get to Pakistan, it's going to be pretty difficult to go through Afghanistan, and now everyone around Afghanistan is on our side. So you want to leave Afghanistan and go through Iran, they're with us. You want to leave Afghanistan and go to India, you got to go through our Pakistan. You want to go to China, guess what? They're with us now too. We're all united here. And so it doesn't really matter, like, you know, Afghanistan, it never was a thing to begin with. It was just this idea that you could get, which effectively, after all this many years, caused the entire region to unite in the ways that we wanted. Now we have the best of all worlds. We have Pakistan, we have Iran, we have Saudi, we have Israel. We have all four of the supergroups in the region under our banner.
Yeah, but in some senses, the loss of Turkey is going to be big.
There's this idea, and it's false, that, at least in my opinion, that there was a Turkish decline after the Ottomans, right? And then Ataturk, Jesus too, was born, and then he saved the Turks from decline, and that they then turned it around and have been in the up and up ever since. And so now Turkey is not the Ottoman Empire, and they're actually doing great. But actually, that was not true. Ataturk only slowed down the process of degeneration. Turkey is now just this big part of what used to be the Ottoman Empire, but actually is like 6 different countries put together that have no interest being a part of each other, and they have all these actors that have now run free, like the Gulans, that support this view that local independence is a great idea. And so, is Turkey this super strong U.S. ally society on the up and up? Maybe Istanbul is, but Turkey is not. And so by doing this, we have actually accelerated the demise of Turkey, thereby providing more opportunities for us to sell weapons, more countries for us to get involved in, and more people, you know, to play against each other. Like the Kurds rising up is the greatest thing for us. Yet another ally for us in our wedge against destroying all these old systems and creating new ones that we can sell weapons to.
And then we can say new systems are always better, right? Democracies are less likely to go to war with each other.
We create a system of power that we've been trying to do since Kissinger was over there trying to create this in the first place. The Kurds rise up, and now they are the center pivot point. They say, look, we've got the Kurds right there in the middle. Iran, you want to do something? You've got to fight our Kurds. Turkey, you want to do something? You got to fight our Kurds. Syria, you want to do something? You got to fight our Kurds.
Iraq.
Yeah, Israel is on there on the other pivot point. You want to go to Egypt? You want to get by the Mediterranean? You want to do any of this? We've got Israel here. And then you've got Saudi, you know, controlling the middle part. You've got Pakistan controlling the far part. They're like our little border keepers, just watching everything going on. If you want to do anything, you've now got to go through our people. At least we think that, right? We continuously believe that we do have real control.
Which we don't. Not as much as we say. Just in the same way that
Yeah.
The Russians can call our bluffs. We're not always going to bomb someone. I know we like to bomb people.
Right.
And we do like to surprise people. Iraq War. Surprise 101. Unneeded. Ton of public opposition.
Right.
Let's make sure we're there for a while. And we did it. That's hey, look.
It was a Putin-style move.
It did. And it worked. I think it worked. In the end, I don't know what the objective was. It kind of worked. It's a fragmented, weird Iraq. The Kurds are stronger than ever, which really, I have to say, was a priority goal. Priority goal.
And so, I think you're exactly right. It didn't actually work out for any of the people, but in this long-term Harry Potter fantasy public planning perspective, it worked. White people are on top. These rich people that went to boarding school are still in charge, and we're still pushing all these little muggles together, making them do stuff with our magic. I have to really hate, because I do really see, now that I've really thought of it that way, I do really see it that way. It is this ultimate British colonialist experience, like reliving the old empire.
Harry Potter politics. You've been listening to Harry Potter politics.
Yes.
And seriously, it's a beautifully accurate story that exemplifies those stories from the 1900s, the 1800s. And maybe it's because we all aspire to have gone to a beautiful, magical private school in a castle somewhere. We want to escape. We want to be part of the elite. We want to make it to the billionaire class.
Right. Well, think of the one that came before it. It's the strongest echo of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which, just to recap, was children in the Blitz that go out to the countryside and then go through a magical wardrobe and become the kings and queens of an ancient kingdom. You're reliving this past imperial glory with the Blitz on our doorstep. So now you have Harry Potter reliving the past colonial glory with the scourge of the East upon us, because Voldemort is from the East.
Mm-hmm. Another couple of Harry Potter points. Harry Potter is set in an Archer-style retro present. Very like cobblestone. What is this, 1920? But also it's supposed to be now.
I think that's Britain, too, is the retro future.
Britain is the retro future. Another example is in Harry Potter, when there are wizards from schools in Bulgaria, they're super evil. They're bastards.
Right,
they're
these
Bulgarians.
Easterners.
Yes.
It represents much more 1800s values than it does today.
It's very nationalities matter kind of British immigration fear. Those Polish are coming. They're going to take our masonry and carpentry jobs.
Right. Well, also, the racial groups that they do present are all these former British colony races. Like,
Chinese.
There's the one from Hong Kong. There's the black guy from Africa. There's the Irish person who is actually, put apart as a minority in the way that they write about him.
And then in the U.S., we would barely even notice the difference. What? You're from an island? What?
Well,
Ireland?
I know people that I've talked about, and they say, "Oh, once I saw the movies, I had no idea that guy was supposed to be black." It's well, it's in the writing. It's subtle racism, but it's there.
They're like, "Ooh, token black guy. He's hot."
Right.
Isn't there a black girl as well?
There's this black girl too, and there's some Indian girls.
Very empire building.
Yeah.
I will also say, it is clearly this. It's not saying that elitism is good, because the bad guys are also the rich. It's not an elite is good, because the blonde-haired character, I don't know these guys' name.
Yeah, the Malfoys.
Malfoys,
well,
right?
I think it's showing they represent that very real in Britain side of the world. Like, they are the pedophile backbone that runs the BBC.
Yeah.
Right? They are these super posh people that hide what they really do behind their status and poshness.
That's a good way to frame it. It's the elites that make everything run are also the most deplorable, heinous humans.
Right, but it's all part of that British worldview, right? Where, in the past, right, in 1600, they were all like this. They were all pedophiles, stealing and degrading our children, killing us at will, doing all these things. But then there was a glorious revolution where the ministry was born and the nurturing state took over, run by citizens that obviously never did anything wrong. And then it was these people from the past that came in and corrupted that. It was not our glorious revolution. And that whole book is once again, oh, there's another attack from the East now, from Europe, from these dirty people, from Voldemort.
Yes.
Right? But our good ministry will once again right itself. Kick out all these pedophiles and start nurturing the state once again.
And I think this lines up exactly with Brexit then too. We'll come full circle. Theresa May made her career being anti-immigrant student, be afraid, there's going to be a terrorist attack. Those were the underlying themes that got the UK to Brexit.
But once again, too, also to match that into Harry Potter, the way that they defeated Voldemort was for the magicians and muggles. They all have to work together because it affects everybody, right? The patricians, the rich people, and the commoners have to come together to stop these Muslims from coming into our nation.
Yep.
Sure, we have differences. Sure, they're pedophiles. Sure, they're screwing you left and right. But they're better than those foreigners.
Better the pedophile you know than the Muslim you can't trust.
That's right. I mean, if it happens behind closed doors, then it's fine because this is Britain. But if it happens out in the street, very improper.
Maybe that's the other side of this Harry Potter British style is the bad stuff that happens, it's only bad if it's seen kind of deal. You know, it's there's always going to be bad stuff behind the magic door. If you really know, and this is also like Doctor Strange as well, if you really know everything, you see how the sausage is made, you're not going to like the laws you have. Because then the process itself is so...
But Harry Potter is different. I agree. That's how it really works. But actually what Harry Potter is there is a man. Imagine this today. Imagine if you discovered that Trump was actually Voldemort. Right? Okay. And so in the book, what ends up happening is Voldemort kills enough people to force them into submission. But everyone is against him. It unites everybody. Muggle, wizard, all the wizarding worlds. And so if you're not so scared of him that you're complying, then you're against him. Whereas our current modern world, there are people that think that Trump is Voldemort. But they see a world where not everyone is against him. And so that means that they're either scared of him or, in some way. And or something's going on there, and these people that see things like that, they don't understand it, and so you go and you turn to Harry Potter, because Harry Potter is a story where there's an obvious threat and everybody turns against it, and we all agree we have to sacrifice everything to stop it.
Yep.
And that doesn't work in the real world. So that is also that's the key fantasy right there, is this unity of purpose that you get out of Harry Potter.
Yeah. There's always going to be indifferent, neutral people. There's always going to be, I don't know,
and
just people.
In Harry Potter, nobody remains on the sidelines. Everybody gets involved, and in the end, even people that were in between, like Snape, he was kind of playing both sides. But in the end, you realize that actually he was always playing one side, or something. This is that redeeming type of thing, and even the bad guy is actually a good guy, because we're all together on this.
It's very Christian, too, I must say, because without Voldemort, Harry Potter doesn't matter.
Oh, well, I know that I have some friends who are definitely Hillbots, and I'm not even sure if we're friends anymore. It's like that. I know you've had similar experiences, but I'm pretty sure that if tomorrow I called them up and started espousing the Hillbot mantra, that they would take me back.
Oh, yeah.
It would be a redemption.
But isn't that fundamentally what a cult is? Let me just say that. A cult is a place where you must give absolute belief. You must suspend your own views and your own values to fit within the group.
Well, all political parties are cults, or at least it works very similarly, right?
Well,
we
I'm
want
just going
something
from the
for the future
definition.
that doesn't exist, and so we worship that future.
Yeah, sure. But I'm just saying that this is it's cultish behavior, because not supporting something, if I don't support you wanting Gary Johnson as president, it doesn't mean I hate Gary Johnson, and it doesn't mean I support Jill Stein, right?
No, it actually means you support the systematic torture and killing of everybody in the entire planet. Voldemort supporter.
Yep, and that is the response you get.
If you're not with us, you're against us. We have unity of purpose.
If anything, the byproduct of these leaders being these imagined futures failing to ignite interest in the general population is more a problem with the delusional than those who see the real world. There are enough delusional people. You only need 10 or 20% to change the entire world. That's all you need. You need up to 20% of people behind your illusion, your future, your cult.
You don't even need that many.
I'm saying,
if the Soviets are the proof here, or the Chinese.
Okay, fine. You even need less. That's what I was saying. It's like 10 to 20%. You only need 10 to 20%. That range, it's yours. But that really shows you how small these systems are, how many true believers there are, how many radicals and members. We're talking millions of people,
right?
Maybe even single digit. And eventually, they will either amass the numbers to take over, or there will be so many people that are done with the system. We will have a proper revolution. Now, we might not be protesting in the streets, but I'll tell you, if everyone boycotts buying stuff for a month, every single American, no, not everyone, but if 50% of Americans stop buying goods and shut down the economy, there would be something different tomorrow or in a month or in 2 months. There's a lot of power people don't coalesce into that Harry Potter future that actually do and does have a lot of potential to change the system. But we do not ever reach that unified moment because we are so individualistic. So many of us are disconnected, and ultimately we very much disagree with one another. I think it's very hard to convince many people that there's a real life Voldemort, that there could be, that there is. Trump is no Voldemort.
Well, as my closing comment, let me just say, though, that something else has happened, in that people now are more willing to accept alternatives to reality than ever before. And it's to the point that in Japan, they have like the herbivore men who would rather, as they say in their own culture, they would rather have pornography, and they would rather not get married and not have these ties because the fantasy world is more preferable to the real world. And so actually the revolution's going on right now. Harry Potter is the revolution. It is these people who reject the real world, and they become obsessed with this fantasy world that presents to them the worldview they want to see. And so rather than going out and becoming radicalized and trying to create that world in reality for other people, they instead are comfortable with just living in their own personal fantasy world. And if they find other people to join in that fantasy world with them, that is the same, virtually, as actually creating a new world. Because now we both agree on a new truth. And if everybody gets involved and everybody starts agreeing on that truth, no matter if it's true or not, it's now real.
I think that's perfectly summarized, and I think that's really how it goes for a lot of people. Harry Potter politics, the fantasization of reality, the preference of fantasy over reality is now what is not only becoming more prominent, but it's what's going to be continually exploited.
Yeah, well, as always, I would just put my stamp down and say, already deconstructed by Baudrillard, so everyone should go out there and read it. I really need to learn French. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, je suis la jeune fille.
Yeah.
As I learned from Muzzy long ago from their TV advertisements.
Good old Muzzy. Now we're doing our own retro reminiscence.
I'm your co-host, John Schwartz, and with me today has been Travis Razor. And if you like our show, you can check us out on iTunes, on Google Play, on Stitcher, and you can go to our website for more episodes at disassembledpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and we hope to hear back from you soon.